Hello again, this is Amos Tarfa, and I just have another video, one more to release for today. And this is an update to my first video on race and ethnicity in America. Again, I said in my previous video, but I want to thank my family, my wife, and the children for the opportunity I have to spend some time just recording some thoughts about the times we live in. I want to start with two quick quotes. The first one is Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If you see injustice, please do not overlook it." The Bible says this many times also. The other quote that can be stated in many ways, but the general idea is the same, is we cannot always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And that's one of the quotes I know many people are told in the workplace. But please, I just want to say that if there's injustice anywhere, that it needs to be addressed. Before I go on, I want to say that after my first video, I got I got some emails, I even got a phone call, and just an opportunity to have a conversation about some of the different things going on in America. Some things that are very sad as far as what people are facing in different parts of the country. And you cannot belittle a person's story. You can listen and learn from their story. So thank you to those who reached out and the opportunity I had to speak with them. Today I'm going to present one solution that can help in one of the challenges facing many in education today. I want to give my proposal and also just get you thinking about possible ways that we can help in a big way to reduce any form of gaps in education in any institution. And just follow with me and you'll see what I mean. My first video is available on my Facebook page, and again, I look forward to discussing either of those. To those who have lost loved ones during this time I even read today someone who lost a loved one overseas, and just thinking about the difficulty, whatever caused it, whether we're talking about the COVID virus or any other form, or even whatever it is, whatever sector of society, whatever has happened. I just want you to know I'm not belittling anyone's story from what has happened in our times. I want to make a quick comment about technology etiquette. I feel like we live in a day and age where you watch interactions on the internet, and sometimes people don't know how to handle disagreeing with one another. Instead, they might start calling names, and sometimes it gets really heated to the point where sometimes these people don't even want to talk to one another anymore. I just want us to encourage our friends to be very respectful of others, even if they disagree. Thank you again to those who wrote to me, and that was not the case for me necessarily. I'm just saying that is something I've observed, that we got the internet before we dealt with how to deal with having the internet and social media. And so now we see a lot of fighting that can happen. We need to grow in our ethics as well when we're dealing with social media and so on. We need to be respectful. If you want to see the video I will do, or because I'm going to do at least one more, feel free you can either see it on my YouTube channel, or you can just email me and I'll send it to you once that's done later on. Today, there are a few goals, and I want to state them clearly. Number one, I want to talk about just a few responses again from my first video. Number two, I want to talk about my story. Why am I involved in any of some of the conversations, or what's my role, or what's the point? What do I know about inner city America? What do I know, just about some tough situations? What do I know about life, in America? I want to share about how I got involved. And then the third thing is I want to add more solutions, especially in the area of education. God willing, if I have another opportunity, I might just finish out, as I said, in the next video, which will be even more academic in the sense of just sharing some of what I'm learning. I'm studying the works of Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass right now, and I want to keep learning and growing in this field. Again, I've received emails and conversations about people talking about the injustices that people have faced. There was a man who was wrongfully accused. Actually, this is not one story, but there have been several stories of black men that were wrongfully accused and put in prison and in jail. Very sad situations. Very, very sad. I even read of a story of a professor who was taking a walk one day, and all of a sudden he's going to get arrested because they said he looked like someone who did something. So very sad. These things do happen, and please know that I'm not belittling that. But part of my message and my goal is really to cause us to examine our hearts and to be careful in labeling people names, but also doing our part in raising up children that respect one another, and in encouraging those who are already older and those who are already in different professions to, whether we're dealing with medicine or we're dealing with education or prison reform or policing, just encouraging everybody to grow in respect and in care for one another and doing their jobs well while showing care and concern. So there's many cases that can be looked at of situations of that are troubling in communities in America. And I want to say I'm sorry that I didn't emphasize some of those, but the bigger goal is what I'm trying to get at, which is dealing with the heart condition. So, as I said in my first video, I've had some experiences in America too, and I'm not going into all of those now. But what I want to say, though, is I'm talking of experiences of just some things that were challenging, or maybe going to a store. I went to a store one time, and just there was an element of rudeness from a clerk, and I had no idea what I did wrong. I think I have an idea, but some of it is just you're in the self-checkout and just a response. And I actually wanted to politely ask, is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? But again, the person had to leave for break, so I didn't see them to ask them. And I just wanted to have a good conversation. I'm sorry if there's something I did wrong. I want to just clarify. And what do? I just, you do what you can, and you tell them to have a good day. But when you can have good conversations, have them with respect and try and see where the person is coming from. Maybe they're having a really bad day. That's something you have to keep in mind. So we need to solve the challenges that we're faced with that have to do with legislation. We have to deal with them on matters of legislation. I said the 13th and 15th Amendment dealt with those issues. There's more, of course, that has to be done in legislation. But we should also see ways that we can make change in our own little circles and in our own personal lives. That's part of what I was trying to say. Both have to be addressed. And I'm sorry I emphasized the one side of personal life. And maybe not looking at some of the legislative side or looking into the statistics. There are a few more ways definitely that we can stand and encourage people when they're faced with injustice. I think of, there's peaceful protests that people can do where they share their views with the community and with their leaders. These are ways that people can have conversations, and I think that's good. And so I just want to emphasize that the Constitution of America allows people to protest peacefully, to have conversations, to have dialogues. In the process of all the calls and messages that I got, I decided to pull out some writings from African American history. I approached a professor of African American history. I sent a message to a few people who grew up here in America, and I will be having more conversations with, or at least just getting more feedback about what are the situations that you face growing up. What are the difficulties that you're facing today? And again, I feel like with all this work going on, it's almost like I'm getting another master's degree in African American history, or Black American history. And I say it as a joke. It's more like a bachelor's. I don't plan to get another master's in African American history. So I just want to say I have learned a lot and I have more to learn, and that's good. We need to take time to learn from one another and see how we can move forward in love and care and concern for our neighbor. I had somebody who even mentioned, this is recent, not far from me, that apparently there was, they might have seen a black man in their community, their neighbor did, and their neighbor thought they would call the police or something. And I thought, wow, these things still happen, and it's sad. But please, I'm trying to say, some people have shared their stories, and there's more stories that can be shared. But what are some principles that we can look at to help us in whatever circumstance we're in, no matter what our background? How can we flourish while we're here on earth, where we're at, while standing for truth, but also doing our part and taking responsibility when necessary? My story, quickly, let me just share about my story and why why I have anything to say in some of this, which I believe that, again, if anybody has insight they would like to share, we should give them a chance, because truth is true, even if the one who is sharing might not have experienced all of it. But let's give them a chance to share, even as they listen to us. Many people know some things about my story in the U.S., but not everything, in a sense. They don't know maybe how I even showed up in the U.S. See, I'm a Christian by the grace of God. I grew up in a Christian home, but I'll say that my faith I was growing in my faith, but I would say that the serious growth happened back in 2006 when I graduated high school, 2005. And I was back at home, and I would say Romans 12, 1 and 2, which talks about not conforming to the world, but being transformed by the renewing of our minds. That set in my life, and it changed everything. It changed the music taste I had. It did a lot of transformation in my life back in 2006. And I repented and I sought to follow God wholeheartedly. I thank God for my pastors and spiritual authorities through the years as those things were happening. At this point, my heart was changed, radically changed. Because of the change that Jesus did in my heart, it caused me also to have a heart to help people. And what's interesting is that after this change happened, I started speaking at high schools all across the country, all across the state where I was in the capital. And while I was speaking at these various high schools, somebody from the U.S. Embassy heard about what was going on, and they invited me to have a conversation about going to school in the United States. That is part of how I got to America. I was speaking at these high schools, and then I was invited to get the opportunity to come to school in America. After arriving in the U.S., I joined a church fellowship in Minnesota, which allowed me to visit and to go to a reservation and serve with the church there in the summers. And it was while I was actually on the reservation in Minnesota that I started learning how to play basketball. There's a reason why I'm tying this to basketball. A lot of people know that I grew up playing soccer and maybe ping pong and tennis, but I started playing basketball in 2008 because while I was there, I started playing with some of the children on the reservation, and they showed me how terrible of a basketball player I was. And so I came back determined. I said, I want to learn how to play basketball because it gives me an opportunity to interact with people in all settings in different places. So I had the opportunity to start playing, and of course now I do much better than I would have done back in 2008. After graduating from college with my first degree in chemistry and philosophy, the minor was in philosophy, I went on to do some training in a school of ministry here in Minnesota. And then I grew up more in my faith, and I was ordained as a pastor elder in 2012. What they would call it is like a tent maker, where I was working and teaching, and then I was also helping to minister and work with people as a pastor. So I did this with a small group of people while working as a scientist even later on. So the term tent maker comes from Paul, the apostle in the Bible, who worked a job and also ministered to people and wrote most of the New Testament. That's the word I'm referring to when I say tent maker. So I started teaching. This is where it gets really interesting. This is where some of my world changed. Because I started teaching in the School of Ministry, in this same program that I went through, essentially. I started doing that, and I was blessed with the opportunity to meet people from different backgrounds. In the process, I met a man who the Lord allowed me to mentor through the years. I found out that he had spent decades in prison and jail, and by God's grace, I was able to attend some of his court cases to support him since he had changed and he wanted to get a second chance. In the process, one of the judges, who was a black woman, by the way, was so shocked that somebody would come with my friend, and of course she looked at the situation and was very kind to our friend. But God gave me grace and strength to do all the things I had to do in encouraging and supporting him. I have learned a lot about the criminal justice system as I have mentored people through the years. Some of them who have come out of prison and jail and want to do right. And unfortunately, some of them who have come out of prison or jail who don't have the opportunity to get a job and actually take care of things. So sometimes they fall behind on their fees and just some other things happen, which causes a cycle sometimes. And so this is one arena that, again, I know people know I've been teaching the scriptures, but might not be aware that I have looked and studied some of the criminal justice system and seen some of the challenges and some of the solutions that I think that need to be looked at. As I said, one of them is when people come out, depending on what crimes they committed, sometimes they don't have a chance to get a job that will allow them to even keep paying some of the fines that were imposed on them. So that's tough. And we have to keep seeking ways to see how we can encourage people who are trying to do right, but who don't have the means necessarily right now. And this is a bigger conversation, but I'm just telling you some of what I learned through my process of mentoring and working with people who have come out of prison. So now please note that I have done some of these things through the years. I am not currently doing all of them now in terms of some of the things that I'm sharing. Of course, I have to remember my order of priorities, my relationship with God first, my relationship with my wife, then my relationship with my children then the ministry and the work that I do, and then the work I do to provide for my family. So my pastor and mentor, Bob Lubeck, who's is the leader at the Pathfinder School of Ministry, has talked about this through the years with me and reminded me that of the importance of putting your priorities right, because you don't want to neglect your family as you pursue to make a change in the world. And so I thank God for guidance and encouragement in that. So this is part of why, again, I'm sharing some of the things I'm sharing, because I see the importance of mentoring and I see the importance of helping people who have come out of jail, trying to figure out life. You might be retired and have some time to help a young man in need of guidance. It will be very good to make that time, to make those appointments, and to make out time in encouraging the young men who are seeking direction. Some people come out of prison or have series of crimes that they've committed, and they come out of prison and they don't know how to do some things like how to pay the bills and how to do this and that. And so we have to constantly be seeking opportunities to help people who are trying to do right and guide them in that. So in conclusion of my background, by the grace of God, I've been blessed with opportunities to mentor people through the years, done work volunteering and teaching the scriptures in the jails, mentored people who were in prison, just playing basketball in communities that have some difficulty, just playing basketball, learning from them, learning from their story, seeing how, I was the captain of a basketball team eventually also, and was able to play in different leagues. So I've taught different courses also in the Twin Cities of Minnesota to students, some of which nobody in their family had ever graduated. So that was also an opportunity to help them. So that's going to lead to my main point of a solution to our time, which is education as a tool. And I'll quote a gentleman who reminds us of the importance of education. So, in light of all that is going on, as I said in this particular video, I want to just focus on education and mentoring as a tool in helping people overcome poverty, especially because poverty is one of the things that will cause other things to go down the line that could be a problem. And I'm going to give you my context of that. And analogies, whenever people use analogies, it is important that we hear the point of the analogy they're using. There's something I coined a few years ago called analogical index, which is how close is what you're saying to the circumstance you're trying to describe. Right? If you use an analogy to describe the situation, you might have had this happen where your friends say, this is just like that. And they talk about something and you say, no, it's not. That's no comparison. So we have to be careful when we use analogies. And so I used the analogy of growing up in Nigeria, and some people, corrected me and reminded me that no, there's different issues that you face. Thank you for clarifying that. The analogy I was trying to make partly there again is in the nature of man's heart and the condition of man's heart that needs to be transformed. The Bible actually talks about that, in terms of our hearts that need to be transformed so that we don't live in wickedness. So we should make time to listen to people, to hear people out. I don't disagree with that. I spent time with some other people, hours listening to people share a few years ago. But ultimately, again, we have to sit back and then ask, what can we do in moving forward and not make sure we're not living with bitterness? So let's talk about education and mentoring. No matter who we are, no matter where we've been, it is important to learn the importance of having mentors. And even when everything seems great in our lives, we will not do wrong in investing and making the time to listen to other people who have something to tell us, to give us insight about what it means to live a life that makes sense. So the Bible says that two things I request of you in Proverbs 30:7-8. Two things I request of you, he was writing, remove falsehood and lies from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. So the author there was talking about just the dangers of both extreme wealth and also the dangers of poverty. Poverty can cause a lot of problems. There's a correlation and there's connections and all of that. When you talk about poverty and drugs and all, there's a connection there. So one thing I want to propose today is a way out of poverty that Booker T. Washington mentioned. And this is, Booker T. Washington was born back in the 1850s, and he said that he was a firm believer in the value of education as the best route to advancement. So I want to talk about something here. You're going to be shocked to realize how COVID and the situation before us can almost begin to help us think about how we can step things up in helping people who are struggling in their communities, especially in the area of education specifically. There are places in America where they talk about dropout factories. I've watched quite a few documentaries. I've watched quite a few movies about situations. This was a long time ago, before we had 5 kids. But my point is, I've watched these things and I've learned about the situation when you're talking about just the challenges that people are facing, the difficulties, and we should not belittle that. But I'm saying now, how can we provide solid education to every child in this nation? So this approach involves, again, mentoring, and it involves guidance to young people. So here's my idea, part of my idea. With Zoom video conferencing, we can set up meetings where we can get somebody, for example, a single mom who has children who are not doing well in school, and she wants her children to do well. Are there people who are willing to say, I'm here to help? I can zoom in once a week or twice a week, and I can ask, what are the questions your child has, and how can we encourage your child in their assignment, in doing their assignment well? We think about how video conferencing has become so popular now, but it's a great tool that somebody in Arizona can help somebody in Minnesota, and somebody in Texas can help somebody in California. We can begin to build networks and encourage parents to reach out. If you need help in education, let us know, and let us see how we can continue to build that. The other thing that I want to propose, and I'm going to make a separate video in explaining this in detail, is that because of the tools available to us on the internet, and I understand not everybody has internet, but if we can get to a library, as I said before, if we can get to a place to access the internet, here's what I will tell you. I did a study about the mathematics curriculum in America from kindergarten to 12th grade, everything we teach. And I was trying to understand what are some effective ways and efficient ways to teach mathematics so that more children can flourish in learning mathematics. And here's what I realized. In 1 year, if you follow an efficient pattern, which I've had a few students ask me to use this program that we put together, in 1 year, you can go through pre-algebra, algebra 1, I take it back. You can go through algebra 1, algebra 2, pre-calculus, and geometry in 1 year. I had a student who's like, bring it on. I'm going to do this. Why? Because there's an overlap between them. Now, why is that important? Because some people are in 11th grade and they don't feel like their education has served them well. Well, here's what you need. Take these steps, take these topics. Here's a list of topics, and let's help you master the principles in mathematics. Let us get people from all backgrounds who are struggling and have difficult situations, who don't feel they're getting the best education. Let's give them the tools. If there is a need, let us know and let us provide the tools to help people to flourish. Because education is ultimately one of the best tools we can help people to advance in life, to come out of poverty. So that's why I wanted to talk about the issue of education as a solution, because I can speak on that for several reasons. One, I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 2 years, and I still teach. I just teach now in a private setting, but in my business in the tutoring world. But I still love seeing what's going on in the academic arena and how we can help. So let me end with two quick examples, and our time is coming to an end here. So I want to end with a few examples. One is the story of Jaime Escalante, a teacher in Garfield High School. And the other one is Erin Gruel. Now, I've written a short paper about just some of what I've noticed in their lives. And one thing I will encourage anybody who wants to be an inspirational teacher is to make sure that you do your best to, get all the support you can get in flourishing as a teacher. And so let me just say this briefly. Jaime Escalante was a math teacher, and he had students. A lot of these students, people thought, nope, these guys are not going to go far necessarily, or whatever. They made stereotypes. Some people had the wrong ideas of some of these people. And Jaime Escalante inspired them. And his story is told in the movie Stand and Deliver. I believe there's a book, Stand and Deliver, and then I think Standing and Delivering, one or the other. There was a book and then there's a movie. And it's encouraging to watch people that come and meet their students where their students are at and encourage their students to excellence. I want to encourage us to keep encouraging our teachers, even those who are in difficult situations. Let us encourage them and let us give them the tools to inspire students. So I use those examples to say a lot can happen when a student commits themselves to pursuing excellence in academics. Let us not leave the bar low. Let us keep the bar high. Let us inspire students to pursue excellence in their academic work, because again, it can open the doors of opportunity for them to help their families and to make an impact in their communities, a greater impact in their communities. So that's just one of the stories that I wanted to bring out. Teachers, thank you for what you do. That is one way we can make a change in our country and in our society. We need schools and education programs and opportunity centers for children and people who don't have opportunities. Maybe one way is for people to go to a local community college and ask, or to a local high school, how can I help? Are there people in your community who need help with tutoring? And I want to volunteer an hour of my week. What can we do? I understand the place for speaking out, peaceful protesting and so on and so forth. But my question is, what do we do beyond when people have shared their views? Okay, which is good. But what can we do from day to day, walking with people who are not getting the best education in their setting, where they might be struggling? What can we do about that? That's what I'm saying, is let's take the next step to engage with people throughout the year with opportunities, to watch them graduate, to watch them move on, and to not just learn the books, but figure out their talents talents and why they exist, because there's a purpose for our existence, and everyone has something that they've been gifted and called to do. So if you want to support the work of the math program I'm talking about, or the tutoring, or if you want the tools for the tutoring, let me know, and I can make a Zoom call where we can talk about the people who want to help with these training tools. I can give you some of these tools that you can use in your community. The topic of drugs, as I said, is one that is connected to other issues. Very sad, and we have to look at how we can support people. Again, some who have left the drugs but want to learn how to live. Are we willing to give of our time, of our talents, and to help other people to flourish? Again, I shared some of my story just to say that I have had experience quite a bit, but there's way more that I can learn, and I want to learn. Please know that. But I've also seen some ways to help, and I pray that we can take these ways and use them in encouraging other people. So let's wrap it up. I thank God for this opportunity. Thank you for your time in listening to all of that. We're going to have, as I said, at least one more video to wrap things up. But let me say this, as it says in Jeremiah 17:9-10, which is part of the point I wanted to make in my first video. It says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. It is important that we realize I need to search my heart. You need to search your heart. Nobody is without sin. We need to ask ourselves, where do I need to repent? Where have I mistreated somebody because of the color of their skin? Or where have I done that which is not right in relating to my neighbor? I'll leave you with a quote by Frederick Douglass. We started with Martin Luther King Jr. and we're going to end with Frederick Douglass. He said, the soul that is within me, no man can degrade. So part of the reality is there is an element of what we can do in our place. What am I going to do in pursuing excellence in my world? Humans are very complex. There's solutions that we can talk about from today till tomorrow. There's experiences that I know are being shared already. And that's encouraging to see. It's encouraging to see when people speak for others. I watch a situation, or I know of situations where somebody showed up at a store and they were not going to sell them something, or they looked down on them because of their skin color. And somebody else spoke and said, this is not right what you're doing. That was good. They spoke. And that's part of what, yes, if we see these things around us, we speak. And we speak with respect and love, and of course sometimes it might be perceived as intense, but we speak, and we just have to be careful not to overlook when we watch somebody get put up, marginalized or looked down upon because of the color of their skin. God has equipped us with tools. Everybody has talents and resources. How can we encourage people to flourish in their setting? So, those are some things to chew on. In my next video, I will probably talk more about Frederick Douglass and some of his writings. I found the speech that he gave, by the way, just a final thought, if you have a chance to read it. He gave a speech at the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial, where there was a man with the chains. I don't know what it's actually called, but I found the speech that he gave, and he said some very interesting things. Of course, he acknowledged the challenges of the past, but he also talked about the hope of the future. And so, if you get a chance, please look up Frederick Douglass and the speech that he gave at the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial. Thank you for your time. Again, I apologize where I did not cover everything in detail and where I might have overlooked some of the suffering that people are facing. Please know that where there's injustice, we need to stand by the grace of God. But ultimately, let us seek to look at our lives and see what can I do today to make a change and to cause others to flourish. Thank you, and have a wonderful 4th of July. Have a great day.